Such tight control. Hello, everyone. Oh, wow. Hi. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks, everyone, for coming out. This is probably the biggest turnout we've had in like 6 or 7 months. What is it? It's Dean, isn't it? You can be honest, it's Dean. So thanks for coming out. Welcome to, I guess this is the July Ember.js meetup, day of July. It's good to see everyone. We're coming up on Ember's 101-year anniversary. It was the last day of September of last year, so some fun stuff. There was a face-to-face meeting this past summer where all the Ember, or past week where all the Ember core team meetings were, core team members were, and there'll be a blog post announcing some fun stuff coming out. Mostly, I guess the biggest announcement is we're like heading towards 2.0, which should be, if you're writing like a sort of idiomatic Ember application today, it'll be it'll be like the 1.6 to 1.7 upgrade. You just upgrade it and it should be gone. There's a lot of stuff that was pre-1.0 that we're getting rid of, but since it made it into 1.0, we basically have to say officially 2.0 before we can deprecate a bunch of stuff. So if you're playing along at home, you might see a lot of deprecation warnings going into master right now. So there'll be like a long period of us saying like, hey, stop using this. We will not support it come 2.0. I don't know when 2.0 will be, but probably the next couple months. And then what other fun news is there? Does anyone have any? No? Cool. And then I will give the standard Groupon pitch. Thank you to Groupon for hosting us again. I'm also an employee of Groupon, so is Dean, so Sean and Edwin. A lot of Groupon people here. Dean, Sean, Edwin, and I actually just formed a brand new team within Groupon to do UI engineering. So we're specifically bringing Ember and other sort of rich UI stuff to Groupon. So we have like a team mandate of making our internal tools work a lot better by doing like client-server architecture. So if you'd like to work at Groupon, come chat with one of us, and we can tell you what that's all about. And I guess I will stop talking, and I will let Dean go.
Hey, everyone. So I'm going to talk about prototyping, specifically with ember-cli. A little bit about me. I work at Groupon on UI engineering, as Trek said. I've been using Ember for about a year, a little bit less, and I've been at Groupon for 3 years. So I've worked with a bunch of different front-end technologies, from Backbone to Angular to Ember to nothing, some of which were more painful than others. Just to get an idea of where everyone else is, how many people have used Ember on their own? Just a little bit. How many people have a production app? It's a decent amount. Cool. So I'm going to talk about wireframing as it is in a lot of organizations right now. People tend to use Illustrator, Balsamic, Photoshop to get their design done. And there's a few problems with these from my point of view. The first is that they're static. And it's really hard for designers to convey what they want to happen when someone interacts with the page. So you get a PDF in your email, and that really doesn't do much. Maybe you'll get a zip of PDFs, and you're supposed to look at them in a specific order, which is really miserable as an experience. The next part that's not good is working with responsive design. Now, it's becoming a thing. I don't think anyone's saying that it's not going to happen anymore. I'm pretty sure most people have decided to hop on the responsive train. And if you've tried to do this in Photoshop, you basically end up making an individual design for each reference size that you want, which is really a lot more work than you want to be doing. It's also really expensive to keep duplicating that work by creating stuff in Photoshop and creating it in the browser as well. So you're writing the HTML, you're doing the design. Plus, if anyone's ever gotten handed a PDF, you know how hard it is to match HTML to even look remotely like the PDF, let alone the pixel perfect that the designer wants. It's just not fun to do, especially because they might not be using the same grid system as you, and many other reasons. And the last and pretty big thing for me is you aren't able to leverage any frameworks. Normally when developers are designing, they'll be using something like Bootstrap or Foundation, or at least something in-house that you've made. With Photoshop and Illustrator, you really don't get to use any of that. You have to just create everything from scratch, which is a lot more work than you really want to be doing. So it sounds like if you start designing in the browser, it's going to be just pretty good. So that's our solution. We're just going to design inside the browser. So that should make everything awesome, right? You're done. All your problems are solved. If anyone's tried prototyping HTML in the browser, you might have hit a few snags right away. It's not exactly the best experience that you have ever had. So you just kind of feel like, oh, everyone convinced me to do this and no one's there to support you. So what's really painful about it? It's really slow. If you're used to being able to directly manipulate things, if you have to go edit a file, switch back to your browser, refresh, that feedback cycle, although it's not super long, it's much longer than the instantaneous feedback that you're used to in a prototyping tool or any designing tool. So there's a few tips that we can use to speed that up. First is Chrome Workspaces. If you've ever used Chrome Inspector, which is like Firebug or Safari's inspector tools, it allows you to manipulate the DOM directly. It allows you to change your CSS inline and kind of play with how sizes and colors are working and any other CSS attributes. There's a way in Chrome now with the latest versions to actually make those changes persist. So if you go into your settings and you set up a workspace, you can bind your CSS directly to your file system, which means that those changes will be persisted. Now, I've spent a lot of time toggling in here and then going back and trying to copy paste over and making sure my changes match up. It's horrible. I have had a horrible time with it. Once I started using workspaces, a lot of that pain went away. You're able to just work in here as fast as you can, and it'll save out. And one of the things that I use is a CSS preprocessor, so I use Sass or Stylus, and as long as you have source maps set up, that will still work with this, which I thought was really cool. You don't have to switch back to using plain CSS. You can use your preprocessors, and as long as source maps is set up, which most setups will do nowadays, you should be good to go. The second thing I started doing was using live HTML reloading. So you can open your HTML from a file link, but if you use a small server, and in this case it's ember-cli, you can actually get live file reloading, which means that as there's something watching all your files, and as soon as you write your file, it will send a request to the browser through WebSockets to reload the page. Now, there's a lot going on there that you don't need to know about, but all that really matters is you edit your files and things happen instantly. There's no more waiting around, no more bouncing between screens. It's pretty nice and pretty quick, especially if you have a nice side-by-side view. And since we're doing that for HTML, might as well do it for CSS. It's a little bit different for CSS because CSS doesn't require a page reload. It actually just removes all the styles from the page and injects the new styles, which makes it even faster than doing a page reload and really speeds up that feedback cycle. So between live CSS reloading and workspaces, my CSS flow has gotten way faster through these tips and tricks. Unfortunately, there's one big elephant in the room that I haven't really talked about, and that's reuse. So the thing that people want when they're designing, and it's sort of solved in Photoshop through some workflows that I've seen, but you're not able to reuse components very well. So there are certain things like layout that you want to just be able to do once and use for every page. So here's an example application. We have our Chrome, our frame on the outside, we have a nav bar, and we have a sidebar. And in the middle is a section that is wrapped with the layout. And so if we look at this, even within that section, there's kind of a layout to that with another section that's kind of wrapped by that. And each section that you nest down is static once you get into the inside. You don't really have to worry about what's going on above you. And in Ember, we call those outlets. Now, to determine what outlet's on the page on a regular app, you'll use the URL to determine what's going on there. So in an Ember app, it's going to be the same exact thing. This is a bunch of stuff going on here, so I'm going to break this down a little bit. The router is just a DSL, and if you've used Rails or Ember before, this will look familiar, or at least a little familiar. So in the router, you have things called resources, and now resources will correspond to objects in your system. So an article is a good example of a resource. But even within the article, you might have different states. So you might have just a displaying state, you might have an editing state, and you'll have maybe like a scheduling state or a management state. Now, all of those refer to the article, so you might want to have like the title and the author stay the same even between those, and only the states will be changing out in their outlets. Little things to notice about the paths. So with the resource, it has a dynamic portion. That's anything after the colon. Let's see if I can bump this up. Is that better? And for the show, we're referencing that as the index path. So just article/ID/ is just going to be the show path. And for schedule, I didn't even specify a path, but Ember will just know to use schedule as the path in that case. It'll just do that implicitly. So here's an example of the templates and what templates will be rendered with what URLs. So the article HBS at the top will actually be rendered for all of the below URLs. The show will just be rendered on /, edit will be /edit, and schedule will be /schedule. So before we dive into a demo app, there's a little bit about handlebars. Handlebars is an HTML templating language. If you want to just write HTML and not worry about any of the reuse, that's fine. But handlebars adds a few functions to our HTML that allow us to get some of that reuse that we're looking for. So I'm going to go into more depth about these, but anything denoted by double curly braces is handlebars. So with that, we're going to go into the demo app. So if you want to open it up locally and play with it, that's fine. If you don't, that's cool too. So this is and just looking at it, we can identify a few regular components. We got a header, we got a footer, and we have our main outlet. And so let's look at what the handlebars looks like for that. Oh, I guess that's a little big. That's lame. I don't know why I did that. So here's the handlebars template for that page. It has a header, which I've pulled out into a partial. I've just done that so I can kind of work with the health and not have to deal with one giant HTML file, because those can often get unwieldy, especially dealing with tabbing things in and whatnot. Inside of that, I have my main outlet, and since I'm just on the root page, the index page, it will show the index HPS, and then I have a partial for the footer as well. So anytime you put down an outlet, you only have to worry about what's going to go in there. You don't have to worry about any outlets above you, and that's kind of what the beauty of Ember does. It handles all of that for you, so you don't really have to worry about what's going on above you. It's actually really, really awesome once you kind of get the idea of how you can nest routes and resources. So partials, pretty straightforward. You just say partial and then the partial name, and you prefix the handlebars template with a underscore. And just like in the previous example, this one, you can put them into folders if you want, and you can nest them. All that matters is the handlebars file has the underscore. You don't need it in the folders at all. So let's go on to the next tab, which is the weather tab. So you can see here there's a little bit more going on. We have another sidebar, and then we have some tabs here. And the URL is changing with all of these different clicks. So I can deep link into any parts of this page, like do full refreshes, and all of that's working. That's not something that's easy to do in prototypes, but with using Ember's router, it gives you all of that for free. So with that, let's take a look at the Ember inspector and see what we have going on here. So we have a few different things going on. We have an application that's rendered, and inside of that, there's a weather template, and inside of that, there's a today, and inside of that, there's a smaller template. So we're nesting a lot. There's a lot of parent-child relationships here. And if we click here, we can see that today goes away and only tomorrow is rendered, or if we click on the extended, only that's rendered. So all of that is just, each one is its own template, and it's getting rendered into the weather outlet. So I jumped into Ember Inspector. It's a pretty useful tool, even for just prototyping. It will show you the current tree of what's being displayed, so what outlets are showing what, but it will also tell you what your template names need to be. So if you put stuff into your router, you're not quite sure what your template names need to be, you can come into Ember Inspector, look at the route, and it specifies what all your template names should be. So let's look at another example that's a little bit distinct. So here's an example where we can see that we have an application and a news.index. So we only have one outlet here, and even though the URL is /news, when we click on one article, we can see that we're going to that specific article nested under news, and there's only one template rendered in this outlet. We don't have two. So what's going on here? If we look at it, we have a implied template. So if you don't put the news HBS for your resource, it will automatically create one that's just an outlet and render into that. And it'll look for the index file first, unless you have something else specified as your index. So for this example, I have news as my index, and then each article is its own template. This tab just shows us if there's a Cubs game today. So that's cool. And the last thing that I have is actually one of the more interesting things that I've found that I've used for prototyping, and that's forms. So we have a pretty basic form here. It doesn't have a lot going on, but one of the things that's really difficult to do when doing mock-ups is form states, and forms often have a lot of states. So you might have validation states, you might have submitted states, and to me, when I hear that and think about Ember, I think about, oh, I have a resource and it's got many routes. And you can think of routes and states being similar. So when I click this, it actually navigates to a subroute and changes out the template. And now, although there's nothing happening, having the feeling of what's going on here, like interacting with this page, I get a really good sense of how this page will interact or should be interacting once it's filled with data. So that's the main guts of the demo site. Now, if you're doing your prototyping this way and you're planning on using Ember for your app, and you designed and prototyped like this, you can hand this to your developer, and essentially they'll be able to just add Ajax. And if you've ever done an Ember site, you know it's a lot more than that. But having the HTML all set up and written for you is a huge advantage and really makes it so you can get things done a lot faster. So all that duplicate work that we were doing, even if it takes the developer 3/4 or a little bit longer than it would in Photoshop, or even a lot longer, we're saving because we're not duplicating all of that effort, and you get a lot more feedback faster. So once you've built your site, you probably want to know how to share it, or you want to install Ember CLI. And it's pretty straightforward. You just npm install if you have Node installed, and new up an app and serve it. You can use preprocessors, and they're documented on Ember CLI's site, and it's pretty cool. So when you want to share it, you can just do Ember build, and it will create a dist folder that has everything you really need in it to serve it. So you can just drop that onto a static server, and it will work. One other solution, and this is a solution that I actually ended up going with, is using GitHub as my deploy location. So GitHub has a branches feature. If you're not familiar, it is normally used to host documentation for a repository. But if you're doing a prototype like this, you can also just put your Ember site on there. And since it's not talking to any backends, it will just work. With this API, it just expects you to have a branch that has all of your HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and images in it. So I found that it's easiest to just clone your repo again, check out the branch, blow away everything in it, and then from your main repo, build and copy into that, and then you can just commit and push. It's a really slick workflow, especially if you don't want to have to deal with servers and whatnot. It's just all Git-based, which I think is really cool. The one thing that you do need to notice is you will need to set your location type to hash. Normally on an Ember app, it will do push state routing, which is awesome and looks really nice. But the Ember or the GitHub servers don't really play well with that, so you'll end up getting 404s when you refresh or deep link to stuff. So if you just switch your environment to, or switch your location type to hash and specify in an environment, you should be good to go. With that, I'm all done. If anyone has any questions, I'm open to them. What's going on?
Just curious. 4 slides ago, when you were showing the install of ember-cli,
yeah,
there's broccoli. Is ember-cli built off of broccoli, or is it just usage?
Mm-hmm. So the question was, is ember-cli built off of broccoli? And the answer is yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Also, ember-cli, although right now it's fully featured, at least for most things, it is under active development until it hits 1.0, so there might be some breaking changes, but it's definitely usable in its current state. So has anyone used this technique already for when they build their apps, just kind of building out HTML and CSS and whatnot? Or what kind of different workflows do you guys have going on? Or do you just build the apps wholesale, so you're doing your JavaScript right away? Is that everyone's approach is just kind of go full hog on it and do your JavaScript and your templates and everything, or? Okay. Cool. Question?
I just got, kind of a random question.
Mm-hmm.
I started probably a couple of weeks or maybe a few weeks ago. Played some Ember stuff. It's pretty fun. But I've been using Runt, and then I'm just switching probably to Gold. Is there any kind of support for that in the future to Gold? Maybe instead of Broccoli?
I don't think that's the plan. I am not really familiar with where their direction is going, but I would assume they're just going to continue using Broccoli because it was kind of written for this purpose. It was written as a build tool, but ember-cli was one of the main initial targets. So I think they're going to continue to use that.
Yeah, it's not going away anytime soon. That discussion has already been on the board.
Okay. So yeah, that is the decision, is that they're going to be using Broccoli going forward.
So are you actually using this workflow? Do you have designers in there doing Ember, or is that what you're doing?
So I've split my workflow into 2 separate parts,
okay.
And I'll do more of the design part up front and then do more of the JavaScript later. I found that it's a little bit easier because I get to focus on one thing at a time, and I don't have to be constantly changing gears from okay, now I need to be researching CSS3 stuff and HTML. It's I can just focus on one thing at a time. And my CSS and HTML skills are a little bit lower than my JavaScript skills, so I can spend more time on that, and then when it gets to the point where I'm plugging actual data in and interaction, then I can move at my normal pace. So I would love to get our designers using this. I think we have a few that are using a HTML-based approach, but we're trying to get more to switch away from Photoshop just because there are so many advantages.
Has any of your designers experimented with tools? Because I find I've done several prototypes using Ember, and I find kind of the biggest barrier is kind of getting that initial templating and layout. And tell them, here, write the HTML, you can reuse these parts, they still wouldn't use it done. So we've been experimenting with tools like Sketch or Macaw that kind of let you visually design and generate some fairly clean and responsive HTML and CSS from the get-go, and trying to figure out how to get that into a workflow where you have a handoff and now you're moving right into prototyping. What sort of tools are you using to bridge that Photoshop to HTML gap?
Right now, so what kind of tools are we using to bridge the gap between Photoshop and HTML? Right now, we don't have any. We're just doing it ourselves, writing the HTML from scratch, and that's not fun. I don't want to be doing that. So, designers are hard to please, I've found, because they want pixel perfection, and understandably so. Another question?
For ember-cli, what kind of scaffolding can it do?
So it can scaffold your app by default, so generate all your folder directory structure. I believe it can also scaffold any of the normal Ember models, so like models, controllers, routes, helpers possibly. I'm not positive on those, but
there's a huge list of generators. If you pull up the ember-cli right now and just do generate /help, you'll see. And you can create a blueprint too. So a lot of this is solved by creating a blueprint for your own workflow. Like a blueprint is basically like, I need these 6 things, right? I need 2 models that look like this. I need tests that look like this. You could do all that now. You can create your own blueprint. Just wire all that stuff up.
Yeah, so blueprints are one of the things that we're actually looking at specifically internal to Groupon, so we can scaffold a lot of the Groupon specific stuff away. And it seems like it would make sense for anyone who has projects within an organization that has a lot of common stuff that they can kind of reuse between each other to use a blueprint of some sort. Are there any other questions?
Can you talk a little bit about what happens after you get your prototype done? And what? Because it's pretty basic in terms of the routes and the template. It's a whole other thing once you start setting up the controllers and stuff.
So if I was to start backing this app that I made with actual data, I think the first thing I would do would be to set up routes to fetch the data and then integrate that into the templates. So I would work on displaying the data first, and then the next steps would be creating any interaction, so whether that's editing or saving. This site is mostly display heavy, just for purpose of the talk. But if I was doing the form, I would just start with the controller then, and start pulling data in off the button or on the button click. All right. I think that's it. Thank you so much.
How much time did we do now? So I guess we have a little bit of time if anyone has general Ember questions or wants to do like a lightning talk or something.
Questions about what we're doing.
Oh yeah, or questions about what Sean, Dean, and I do internally. Mostly cat gifs, let's be honest.
What does Sean do?
What does Sean do specifically? Sean does all the organization stuff that I'm really, really shitty at. So if you need someone to create Google Docs and like organize your thoughts, he's way better at that than I am. I mostly am a distraction. And then Dean and Edwin do all the real hard work.
Mostly Edwin.
All right, yeah, let's be fair, it's mostly Edwin. Do you want to demo any stuff?
I have nothing.
You have nothing to demo? All right, fair enough.
It wouldn't be relevant to Ember.
The motion stuff?
Oh yeah, the Sense.js.
Yeah.
I have that library.
Here, come demo something. Use Dean's laptop. Let me volunteer all sorts of things. Let me put you on the spot and then volunteer Dean's hardware.
Oh my god, okay.
Hey, so if you're wondering what it's like to work with me, it's pretty much like this.
Can you use the laptop?
This is terrifying. No, actually, I could demo this with. So, does everybody have like mobile phones? I'm sure you don't, but if you do, we're at that point. If you have a dumb phone, then I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Now, whatever mobile phone you probably have, I'm going to go ahead and assume that it's Chrome. If you're not using Chrome, then I don't know what you're doing. Anyway, so hi, I should probably introduce myself. I am Edwin. I am a student at MIT going into my junior year. I am Trek's intern for this summer. He makes me do things with the computer. I move pixels around. It's very fun. So conveniently, I'm actually wearing the shirt for this. But 2 weeks ago, I went to San Francisco for a hackathon at Greylock, which is a venture capital firm. There's like, I think 140 people invited. We built stuff, which was fun. And the thing that I built is a library called sense-js, or sense.js. So me and 3 other people, what we decided to do, anyway, so let me preface this a little bit. If you guys are all familiar with HTML5, HTML5 does a lot of really cool things and exposes a lot of really cool hardware information. Now the thing is, nobody really uses it because hardware is kind of one of these things that everyone just assumes is kind of just a native iOS or Android or Windows phone type thing. So that kind of like puts up this barrier to entry for utilizing hardware spec and hardware data from like a web developer standpoint. We're kind of limited to this idea of like, oh, if you're going to build a web app and you're going to build it for mobile, then it's just going to be kind of like static. You press some buttons, you do some swipes, whatever. So the thing is, with HTML5's device orientation motion and device, I forget the names of them, whatever. But you can use them to access your accelerometer and gyro data in this kind of constant stream of nasty business. So what we decided to do is build a wrapper for that in JavaScript. So that means that we can use simple JavaScript callbacks like sense.flick and sense.flip to basically utilize our hardware using JavaScript. So I'll just demo this here. But so I'm on the flick demo. If you actually take your phone and you flick it, it actually registers that using a simple JavaScript callback. So all the code for that is like 3 lines. It's like sense.flick. You pass it a callback, and that's just like slide tile over. But just to like let you guys know that this is all code that will run in like basically any mobile browser these days. I mean, like all this information is already available for everyone, but nobody's been using it. So I should probably go through all the demos. But so orientation, if you guys go to the orientation, I should probably give you the link. So that's sense-js .jit.su. But it seems like a lot of you guys already found the link, so whatever. So this is orientation. It lets you bounce a little ball around. This is just like a kind of constant stream of all the data that get passed over. The second one is flick, which I just demoed, but I'll do it again for fun. You flick your phone, and it will slide the tile over. When I made it, I was like flicking a lot, so I like really upped the default setting to like a very intense flick. Flip is another one. If you actually take your phone and so you're looking over here. I'm going to demo this to you directly. So you take your phone, you flip it, and it changes color.
Saw it?
Yeah. So it's kind of like a little magical type thing. Color fling. This is a fun one. So if you guys actually all go to color fling, I'll open it up on the browser actually. So if you go to, yep. Okay, someone discovered it. So if you fling, you can actually fling a color over at all the other devices that are connected to this page right now. Now, this is all using WebSockets with a simple node server in the back end. The amount of code that is used to write this, not including the library itself, is about 4 lines, I think. It's like sense.flick. You send a message to the server says, oh, hey, let's broadcast to all the other connections. So that's like one use case. It's also really, really fun. Me and like the other 3 teammates were just like walking around like, haha, I'm going to change it to purple, and no, team red is better. So this is like a very fun thing. We also have scroll. So scroll is so if you go to scroll, it's just like a bunch of lorem ipsum. This is a little bit more jank, but it kind of like just went to prove a point that we could possibly do this. So including one line of JavaScript, which is just sense.add scroll tilt, you can make any page just scroll based on like tilting your phone.
Whoa.
So I mean, like it needs a little bit of fixing. Like the scrolling animation is not the most smooth thing, but it's just like a proof of concept type thing, and we built it in like 20 hours, and we're all just like, I don't know what's going on, or all-nighter, whatever. But anyway, it's a lot of fun. The cool thing about this is also, we actually wrote our documentation and our spec first. Our repo is online and open sourced. We are our 4 people are totally interested in taking pull requests, submissions, and whatnot. You guys can browse our kind of crappy hackathon code and like see if you guys can make some awesome fixes. But all the documentation is available for every single function. We have a bunch of default values. You can pass in an object hash with a bunch of different settings, so you can like tweak the things to your liking and whatnot. So there's a lot of cool things. Also the color fling demo that's available as the entire website, actually. So there's instructions on how to start everything. So super quick to get started. So any questions? I know you were raising your hand earlier.
With the scrolling one, did you set it up to to work based on a specific orientation of the phone, or to grab the orientation when it loads and adjust?
So I didn't implement that one particularly. There's like a lot of really... So this was something that we actually spent like about 3 or 4 hours just discussing the mechanics of, because as it turns out, scrolling on tilt is a very, very complicated thing, and we didn't really have that much time to implement all this functionality. So right now, I don't remember the exact implementation, but I think it's doing it from the absolute 0. Yeah, there's a lot of weird things that go along with this, because like, for example, let's say you're reading here and you're walking around and you change, it has to have like a resting point, which it needs to determine at some point. And that's like a very confusing and very like nebulous thing. So we weren't able to make it completely solid for every use case, but like, I'm just going to blame it on the hackathon.
Cool, thank you.
Cool. Does anybody else have questions? Want a link? Want to star my repo? Yeah.
I don't know if you refreshed, you get a star.
Sorry?
I said if you refreshed, you already have a star.
Hey. 134. 137. Oh, it's so exciting. Awesome. Well, thank you for letting me demo this thing very on the spot. Wow. Hopefully it was interesting in some way. If you're interested in any of it, yeah, definitely come talk to me, whatever I am. Yeah, cool.
Any other general Ember questions? Anyone else want to be put on the spot? Don't make eye contact with me. I'll make you come demo things. Okay, I guess that's we're good for today. I think we're going to head down to Motel Bar, which is the bar sort of in the ground floor just outside of this building. If you would like to... Boo. What? Why boo?
Because they kicked out all the food trucks.
Oh, yes. It wasn't just them. It's also the other restaurant in the building who have a history of being less than optimal and nice to people. I won't name them because I don't want to give them free advertising. So we're going to head to Motel Bar, totally optional, just casual drinks, probably stick around for, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes or so, and then head on our way. But thank you, everyone, for coming, and thanks, Dean and Edwin, for giving talks.